Well, thank you everyone for joining this webinar. It's a really good opportunity to share very quickly and briefly what we have been trying to do in the past year or so. My name is Tarsis Teo. I'm working in Pantea. We're a transport research consultancy, and we've been working on two deliverables or two tasks, 2.1 and 1.2. And these generally they cover the policy, the political and economic issues regarding big data in managing transport operations. So it's a very broad topic. We had a lot of difficulties trying to just understand the scope of what is being, what we should look at. In the next 10 minutes or so, I'll present just a brief overview of what we have put together and synthesized. So let's go to the next slide. So let's start with the economic issues. It's good to start with who are participating in such a big data economy. And we have data users, we have data suppliers, and data facilitators. And these are the three very generic but very basic types of business models which are needed in any big data economy. And when we see them overlap with the type of aspect we're looking at, which is the transport, we see that the data users are firmly within the transport sector. Can you go to the next? Yeah, thanks. In the transport sector, that's our main scope. So we're looking at how the transport sector, whether they are fleet operators or they're infrastructure managers or bus companies, whatever they are, or even private citizens driving their own car, how are they going to use big data? And of course, some of them do the analysis themselves, some of them depend on others for analysis. But we see that the data users and data suppliers are really kind of the core aspect for the big data economy in transport. And next. But we also know that the transport sector requires and depend a lot on data provided by other sectors. Just to note as well, when I talk about transport sector, this also includes those in the public sector who are managing the transport infrastructure. Many of them are in charge of, making sure traffic runs smoothly, etc. And they depend then on other sectors. Could be the weather, those in the weather forecasting industry, or in the e-commerce industry. Different sectors who provide very important data to the transport sector for them to do whatever analysis they need. And then there is a third group, which are the data facilitators. These are those who are developing the technology necessary for the analysis, for the transmission of data, and just to provide basically the systems, the technical systems that help to interpret the data. And these are mostly in the ICT sector. But we also noticed as we were doing our review that a lot of these companies are merging, or let's say, better say, overlapping. Transport sector companies are also going into developing a lot of ICT tools, and from there they are branching on and providing services as software companies. And so there's a lot of merging happening, and I think that's really interesting, and it's very competitive for such a business. And so we reviewed a lot of research on this, and we came up with several key themes. We go to the next. Yeah, basically research are quite, they agree quite a bit that big data can improve the planning and the execution of transport services much better. So it also, of course, depends on the implementation and what kind of data you use. But in general, there's a lot of potential. Some of the examples are, shared situational awareness, how each actor in the transport sector can perceive what's happening to the other transport actors, and so on. There are more examples there. And these services, when they are planned better and executed better, they can definitely make the transport sector business models a lot more competitive, which is, it doesn't mean that they'll be fully successful. It's always a dynamic situation. Different companies become better and compete with each other, and it's not a clear indication of success, but definitely that the services provided to customers will improve. We go to the next. And the other thing we notice is that transport industry also, a lot of players become data suppliers. There are several reasons for it. Of course, for profit, that's easy. They sell the data. They might also want to exchange their data for other data, or another thing which profits them, which is to support third-party services that complement their own. So to provide just enough data for another company to come in and provide services that, complement their own services. So, and there are other reasons, like support for research, and of course, sustainability. And finally, that some of them are just legally obligated to share data. So the transport sector has to also learn how to collect the data properly, and will eventually have to make that data available to other industries or even the government if necessary. Then we go next. I think one of the key findings that we had was that there is a bottleneck in terms of how the data facilitators or the ICT sector is developing in Europe. This we can see as well in how the labor market is developing. There's generally a very large shortage for education and for data professionals in this, focusing on transport operations. And the education sector is not really that advanced, I think, or rather there's a difficulty with what happens when someone graduates from some data science course. Can they find a job, and will it be interesting for them? And we see that there is generally a migration to other more competitive countries and cities that can use data scientists much better. So this will be something where if we are going to contribute to the policy roadmap, we'll have to tackle this issue. And it's a very big issue, and we'll see how we deal with that. Anyway, next. On the downside, there is of course a cost for the innovation process, and there are different types of costs and risks involved in using big data. And that means that, like I said, this using big data is not a surefire success story for everyone. It has to be implemented well, and you generally have to make sure that how you are implementing has the least cost to your company and the most benefit. One particular thing is the reorganization and adaptation of processes. How willing and how easy is it for companies to change how they are working? It's a big question, and it always pops up every time there's a new technology being introduced. And I think this will be something that companies will have to deal with eventually. Next. Right. So then we, this is an earlier deliverable, but I think it was easier if I started with economic issues first. And we did a task to just do a survey of what kind of policies there are that affect the big data in transport in Europe. Using the same framework, I just explained this. there are quite a lot of policies that deal with the different sectors, but not specifically for big data as such. But they overlap with big data because a lot of it has to do with developing or creating data and using data in certain ways. And some of it may be big data, but some of it just small data or long data. And some of it is just about improving the sensors in vehicles or Internet of Things. So in the transport sector, there is the intelligent transport system policies, automated driving, smart mobility, road safety, and all of these have some very direct influence on creating data and using data for management. And go next. Yeah. In terms of data being a data supplier, there is the directives for public sector information, and a lot of it has to do with a general trend, which is to open data for others to use, open access for research data, which are created during, for example, Horizon 2020 projects, and other policies which encourage data sharing between businesses and between the government, and other things like specifying data formats to improve interoperability of transport information systems. And as you can see, it covers all the different modes, or all the different transport types: air, river, maritime, rail, public transport. Next. And there are some policies which are directly related to just the digital economy, the digital single market, the data economy, and these are really general. They are not specifically on big data, though they will mention big data as a keyword, but it's a lot to do with removing hindrances for data to be shared around. And part of it is also to think about, well, what is the intellectual property rights for data? How do we look at that? And privacy issues, which we have also discussed before. So how to share data properly and ethically. Next. Right. So if the public sector comes up with policies, what is the reaction of the private sector? So some of the trends we see are as follows. There's, of course, the industry leads in the integration of information systems. They are basically setting the benchmark. They also support the open data in some certain aspects. They do data sharing by themselves. Some of it is to legitimize their own data collection, so they share it with public authorities to sort of say that we're doing something good with the data. And some of it also to comply with the regulations. And in some cases, they don't play well with policies. They sort of resist it for the sake of their own business operations, their business interests, or their consumer privacy, company confidentiality, etc. Next. And so just in summary, there is a very fragmented policy ecosystem. So things which are just touching different sectors, different very specific instances, but no overall big data strategy for Europe. And in a way, this is good because big data as a technology, as a business model, as an important technology in business models, is also developing. A lot of things which need to be tested out. And so it's quite good that there is little regulation at the moment, but the policies need to be developed in accordance to how it's being used in the industry as well as in government sectors. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.